This is part 2 on chapter 11 on Islamic political ideologies. So continuing on from the first video, we have our slide here on beliefs. So again, remember all of the ideologies that we're studying in the course are going to have certain core values, core beliefs. So of course, again, this one's a little bit different, where there's obviously the religious aspect in conjunction with the political aspect. So these are probably familiar to you already, where like like Christianity or some of the other major religions, we're given some of the core tenets here of Islam, right? So faith in Allah, or God, belief in the reading the Quran and the teachings of Muhammad. So those of you maybe that have had other courses on Islam or Middle Eastern history, for example. So remember, Muhammad is seen as sort of the last and most important prophet, where so for example, Islam, they also recognize Jesus and other prophets from say the Old and New Testament, but they say Muhammad is sort of the last and sort of the most important for that part. So speaking about those other religions, we also refer to Islam as one of the Abrahamic religions, coming from Abraham, and then monotheistic, meaning belief in just one God, whereas that's again a little bit different than, say, for example, Hinduism, which would be polytheistic, or belief in multiple gods, Vishnu, Brahma, and so on. So I have a link here. So Islam has 5 pillars to it. So I thought the embassy from Saudi Arabia actually has a nice website here. So you can see saudiembassy.net, and they have a good description here of the 5 different pillars of Islam. So again, pretty simplistically, you can see here at the beginning of each one, right? So profession of faith, prayer, almsgiving, fasting during the holy month of Ramadan, and the Hajj, right? The pilgrimage to we refer to it as Mecca here in the United States. I guess more Makkah is how they spell it there. So these are the 5 main pillars of Islam. So this is from the again Royal Embassy of Saudi Arabia up in Washington, D.C. So continuing on here, one term that's often misunderstood, particularly here in Western countries like the United States, is this concept of jihad, where we usually think about that as being more like a holy war here, right? Again, think about, say, terrorist groups like ISIS or Al Qaeda, other groups often referring to jihad. They're talking about, for them, that means holy war. But the real definition you can see here is where believers, put struggle here in quotation marks, because jihad and the kind of translation really is more to struggle. So believers struggle with themselves and their communities to be good Muslims, and also to proselytize to enlarge the Muslim community. If you're not familiar with the term to proselytize or proselytization, it just means kind of sharing the faith, trying to sort of recruit others into the faith. So, for example, the 2 largest world religions, Christianity and Islam, proselytizing is a very important part of each of those. For example, for Christians, sharing the gospel with others, and so forth. Where again, a little bit different, Judaism, Jews do not proselytize to that same level. So, for example, think about some groups like the Mormon Church, for example, has taken that to a very even higher level, right, where they sort of required or expected to go on mission trips either outside of the country or perhaps other areas in the United States, trying to recruit other folks into Mormonism. So again, just a little silly thing here I put in here. So again, jihad can also mean holy war. There was this basketball player a few years ago. So sometimes we talk about racial profiling. So you think about, man, a young man that might have had a hard time getting through some airports here in the United States. So this guy played for the Cincinnati Bearcats basketball team a while back. So you can see here his name is Jihad Muhammad. I thought, oh man, that poor guy must have been kind of random stopped at every airport that the team traveled to around the country. So I guess a little silly thing there. All right, so continuing on. So more beliefs here. So you might have been familiar with this term Sharia. So that just refers to as religious law. Although a lot of folks would say Sharia is actually more kind of about sort of custom, again, sort of moral guidance here as well. So it's not exactly the same as like, just say a book of laws, for example, that you're in violation of section 18b or something like that. Again, it has sort of this legal and moral guidance. All right, but still, the adherence to Sharia is one of the sort of primary core beliefs of a lot of Islamist groups. Again, like Boko Haram in Nigeria, the ISIS groups, that kind of thing, where they really feel like Sharia needs to be front and center in those societies. All right. So another vocabulary word, hopefully you're familiar with from other courses. So it says many Islamic countries are theocracies. So again, that's any country where a certain religion or faith plays a dominant role, and so there's not really that separation of church and state like we would have here in the United States. So, prime example, thinking about over in the Middle East, that neck of the woods. So the country of Iran, one of the largest countries in that area, is its actual name is the Islamic Republic of Iran. So they're saying front and center that not only are we a country, but we are an Islamic country. So again, like say in Iran, they have an elected leader, just like any other country, most other countries, but they also have, say, for example, a Supreme Council of clergy, the Ayatollah, which is sort of the highest religious cleric in the country, would be involved in that too. So again, a little, much different sort of situation of government than we would have here in the United States. So then the third section here, we also have this idea of Islamic law, right? This set of moral and ethical principles. So all these things sort of combined, again, gives that sort of you can see how those apply to the Islamic political ideology that we're looking at in this chapter. And of course, that would vary some from country to country, right? So some Muslims, really do believe in adherence to Sharia. Others believe, well, looking at more modern society, maybe that's not as relevant, perhaps, as it used to be. All right, so looking at some of the history here. So one of the major things that we see in the world today, and we've really seen over past many years, is this divide between the Sunnis and the Shiites, right, or the Shia. So again, we looked at a few slides back. The Sunnis actually comprise about 85% of all Muslims in the world. So not only are they a majority, they're very, very large majority. But the main difference, again, between these two groups is this dispute over the line of succession after the fourth caliph, right? So again, if Muhammad was considered the first, after the fourth there, the first four are pretty widely agreed upon. So then the main difference there is the Sunnis believes that they've been chosen correctly. So of course, again, there's no caliph today. That ended back in the Ottoman Empire days, prior to World War I. So again, this in the Sunnis, the idea was again more of a consensus choice, which meaning more it was like kind of an elected or sort of agreed upon a figure for the caliph, for the caliphate. Whereas Shias, on the other hand, believed it much more sort of through the bloodline, through Muhammad's bloodline, and also therefore sort of this divine appointment or appointment coming straight from God, straight from Allah. So then there's this sort of separate group here, the Twelvers. They believe this 12th Imam is still out there, still waiting for the right time to return. All right, so you might be familiar with this group as well, the Wahhabis, either referred to as Salafism or Wahhabism. And this is a group of sort of very conservative, very kind of more strict Islam adherents. So this is a group that has had a lot to do and been involved with the ruling Saudi Arabia, kind of the center of Islam, all the way back since the early 1930s. So again, Saudi Arabia with its oil money and wealth through other means has been very instrumental in promoting this Salafism or Wahhabism throughout the world. So even here in the United States, a lot of, say, local mosques, for example, their imam or their religious leader is often provided from Saudi Arabia. So sometimes, you might even have a situation where, an Arabic-speaking imam from Saudi Arabia is, you know, is the imam or the church leader for a group, of people from maybe South Asia that don't even speak Arabic, so they have to have a translator, something like that. So the last group I wanted you to be aware of here is the Sufis, or the practice what we refer to as Sufism. So this is more of a mystical sect that's found throughout Islam. So you don't hear as much of them being involved in this sort of ongoing conflict between the Sunnis and the Shia there. So I just wanted to show you briefly here, so you can see there's again, a lot of these things are very high technology nowadays. So there's even the Sufism.org here. All right, you can check out here where they have a Sufi lodge, all these type of things, right? So you can just see some of the things that they're involved in. So so again, looks like a lot of these folks might be in England or elsewhere. Of course, this is an English language site, right? So even have this chickpea press, right, of Sufi tales here for younger younger readers. So you can see here, right on their website, it says, what is Sufism? It's a way of life in which a deeper identity is discovered and lived. Deeper identity beyond the already known personality is in harmony with all that exists. So again, it's a little bit of a different thing than the sort of other two major groups of Islam. All right, so looking at that sort of Shia-Sunni distinction here, so you can see the Shia or Shiite Muslims, that more than a third of all of them that live in the world today live in Iran. Again, that's a big country. You can see from the borders here. And again, this is a little dated, but that these numbers would not have changed dramatically since that time. So you can see again, Shia are sort of in this small belt across the Middle East over into to South Asia. So again, you can see here one of the next big Shia populations is in Iraq. So that's been one of the major problems there, where Saddam Hussein, when he was the dictator in charge of, or leading leader of Iraq, he was a Sunni Muslim. So his minority group, the Sunni, really kind of kept down, oppressed, sort of ruled with a heavy hand over the Shia. So then when after the United States invasion, when he had to kind of flee from power there and was caught by U.S. Special Forces and was eventually hanged. Of course, so then we have seen the Shia majority have been in power since then with Maliki and some of the other presidents they've had since that time. So we've kind of seen much more of a strong connection between Iraq and Iran since the end of Saddam Hussein. So because again, Iraq has a majority Shia population, so obviously these two are going to have much more to do with each other than they previously did. So you might, so actually Iraq and Iran fought a huge bloody war during the 1980s for about 8 or 9 years, where millions of people were killed. So a much different situation today. So the United States has often criticized Iran for meddling or being a little too much involved in Iraqi politics. All right, so this is the Grand Mosque in Mecca there. So you can see all the worshippers there, sort of clad in their white clothing. So you can see again, these are very sort of commonplace in Islamic architecture. These huge minarets here. So again, you can kind of gives you an idea of the size of this thing. Everyone around there. So I thought this was a nice picture. It looks like probably at dusk that this was taken. So again, just kind of gives you an idea of. So when we talk about the Hajj, right, the pilgrimage to Mecca, this is kind of the place where the Muslims would end up. So if you've seen, for example, the autobiography of Malcolm X, the movie with Denzel Washington, when he takes the Hajj to Mecca, he would have been in this area. So we'll go ahead and stop.